You have no right to be digging on my property. Karen screamed at me from across the fence line, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing toward my shovel. I'm calling the police right now. What she didn't know was that I wasn't just some random ranch hand. I was the Regional Water Authority Director for the entire county. And in exactly 5 minutes, when those cops arrived, they'd be asking me what to do about her $4 million estate that was about to lose every drop of water it had. But what happened next made this entitled HOA president realize she'd picked the absolute wrong person to mess with. Let me tell you about the day Karen tried to destroy my family's 40-year-old ranch, and how she ended up begging me not to shut off the water to her mansion. Comment where you're watching from, this gets absolutely wild. My name's Jake, and I've been working the same 50-acre ranch in Hill Country, Texas for the past 15 years. My grandfather bought this land back in 1983 when it was nothing but scrub brush and cactus. We've spent decades turning it into something beautiful, raising cattle, growing hay, and living the simple life. The ranch sits right on the edge of Willowbrook Estates, one of those fancy new developments where houses start at $2 million and the HOA fees cost more than most people's rent. When they built that neighborhood 5 years ago, we didn't think much of it. Live and let live, right? What I didn't mention yet is my day job. Sure, I work the ranch every morning and evening, but Monday through Friday, I'm the regional director for the Guadalupe Valley Water Authority. I oversee water rights, utility connections, and emergency shutoffs for 12 counties. Been doing it for 8 years now, ever since I got my civil engineering degree. Most folks around here know me as Jake the Rancher. They have no idea I control the water supply for half of Central Texas. The villain's first mistake. This particular Tuesday morning started like any other. I was out replacing some rotted fence posts along our eastern property line, the side that borders Willowbrook Estates. The corner post had been leaning for months, and I finally had time to dig it out and set a new one. I'd been working for maybe 20 minutes when I heard the clicking of high heels on pavement. Looking up from my post-hole digger, I saw her. Karen Mitchell, president of the Willowbrook Estates HOA. I recognized her from the neighborhood meetings they sometimes invited us ranch folks to attend. She was marching toward me in a white pantsuit that probably cost more than my truck payment, designer sunglasses perched on her head, and that look. You know the one, the I'm about to make this your problem look. Excuse me, she called out while still 30 feet away. Excuse me. I leaned on my shovel and waited for her to reach the fence line. What exactly do you think you're doing? She demanded, hands on her hips. Morning, Mrs. Mitchell, I said politely. Just replacing a fence post. This old one's been leaning since the storm last month. That's not your fence post, she snapped. That's on HOA property and you're trespassing. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I've been working this exact fence line for 15 years. I know every inch of our property boundaries because I helped survey them myself when we updated our deed in 2019. This fence post was a good 6 feet inside our property line. But here's what I didn't know yet. Karen had been planning this confrontation for weeks. Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, I said, keeping my voice level, but this is definitely our property. The survey markers are right over there if you'd like to take a look. Karen's face turned red. I don't care about your so-called survey markers. The HOA attorney reviewed our plat maps, and this entire fence line is encroaching on community property. You've been illegally occupying our land for years. That's when I realized what was really happening. The Willowbrook Estates HOA wasn't just being difficult, they were trying to grab our land. Karen pulled out her phone and started taking pictures of me working. I'm documenting this illegal activity, she announced. And I'm calling the police to have you arrested for trespassing and destruction of property. You won't believe what she did next. As I stood there with my shovel, Karen speed-dialed someone on her phone. Yes, I need to report someone destroying property in Willowbrook Estates, she said loudly, clearly wanting me to hear every word. He's digging holes and damaging our community infrastructure. I need officers here immediately. She hung up and smiled at me like she'd just won the lottery. The police will be here in 5 minutes. I suggest you gather your tools and leave before you get arrested. But here's the insane part. While Karen was busy making her dramatic phone call, she had no idea she was standing directly over the main water supply line for her entire neighborhood. See, there's something Karen didn't know about the land deals that created Willowbrook Estate. When the developers bought the surrounding properties to build their fancy neighborhood, they needed access to the regional water system. The closest connection point was a main supply line that runs directly under the corner of our ranch. 5 years ago, the Water Authority, that's my department, granted them an easement to connect to our main line. The agreement was simple. Willowbrook Estates gets water access, but the ranch maintains full ownership of the land and the right to work on our property without interference. Karen was standing less than 10 feet from the main shutoff valve that controls water flow to every single house in her precious neighborhood. A valve that I installed personally. A valve that only I have the authority to operate. The police sirens were getting closer, and Karen was practically bouncing on her toes with excitement. She was about to learn that calling the cops on the Regional Water Authority director was the worst mistake of her life. What happened next will shock you. 2 patrol cars pulled up to the fence line, and officers Martinez and Johnson got out. I recognized both of them. We'd worked together on several emergency water shutoffs during the drought last summer. "Morning, Jake," Officer Martinez called out as he approached. "We got a call about some kind of property dispute?" Karen's confident smile faltered just slightly. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. This man is trespassing on HOA property and destroying our infrastructure." Officer Johnson looked at me, then at the fence post I'd been working on, then back at Karen. "Ma'am, can you show us exactly where you believe the property line is?" Karen pointed dramatically at the fence. "Right there. Everything on this side belongs to Willowbrook Estates." That's when Officer Martinez started chuckling. "Ma'am, do you know who you're talking to? Some ranch hand who thinks he can do whatever he wants." Karen snapped. "This is Jake Morrison," Officer Johnson explained patiently. "He's the regional director of the Guadalupe Valley Water Authority. He's responsible for all the water and utility easements in this area, including the ones for your neighborhood." The color drained from Karen's face. "But that was just the beginning." "There must be some mistake," Karen stammered. "The HOA attorney assured me that this land belongs to the community. We have documentation." I pulled out my phone and opened the official Water Authority app that gives me access to all property records, utility easements, and emergency controls for the region. "Mrs. Mitchell, would you like to see the actual survey records for this area?" I showed her the screen displaying our ranch boundaries, clearly marked and GPS verified. The fence line was exactly where it was supposed to be, 6 feet inside our property. But our lawyer said. Karen was starting to panic. Officer Martinez shook his head. "Ma'am, it sounds like someone gave you some bad information. This is definitely ranch property, and Mr. Morrison has every right to maintain his fence line." That's when Karen made her second crucial mistake. Instead of apologizing and walking away, she doubled down. "I don't care what your little app says," she shouted. "The HOA has invested too much money in this community to let some cowboy destroy our property values. I'm calling our attorney right now." She started dialing her phone again, but Officer Johnson held up his hand. "Ma'am, you need to calm down. Making false reports to police is a serious matter." But here's where it gets crazy. While Karen was having her meltdown, I was getting an emergency alert on my phone from the Water Authority Dispatch Center. My phone buzzed with a priority alert. "Water main break, Sector 7, immediate response required." Sector 7 was the industrial district about 15 miles north of here. A major supply line had burst, and we needed to reroute water flow through backup systems to prevent service interruptions across 3 counties. I looked at the officers. "Guys, I hate to cut this short, but I've got a water emergency. I need to get to the control station." "Of course," Officer Martinez said. "Mrs. Mitchell, I think we're done here. Mr. Morrison is working on his own property, and there's no crime being committed." But Karen wasn't finished. "Wait just a minute. I'm not done with this conversation. The HOA board is meeting tonight, and we're going to discuss legal action against this ranch." That's when I made a decision that would change everything. "Mrs. Mitchell," I said calmly, Before you go making threats, there's something you should know about your water supply. I walked over to a small concrete pad near the fence line, the one Karen had been standing on during her phone call. I pointed to the metal cover plate marked GWVA, Authorized Personnel Only. This is the main supply valve for Willowbrook Estates, I explained. Every drop of water that flows to your neighborhood comes through this connection. The easement agreement your developer signed gives the Water Authority full access to this area for maintenance and emergency operations. Karen stared at the valve cover like she'd never seen it before. Now, I'm heading to handle this emergency, I continued. But when I get back, I'll be conducting a full inspection of this supply line to make sure there's no damage from today's confusion. The look on her face was priceless. 3 hours later, I was back from handling the water main break. The emergency had been resolved, but dealing with Karen's harassment had given me an idea. If the Willowbrook HOA was planning to make legal trouble for our ranch, maybe it was time to take a closer look at their community's compliance with Water Authority regulations. I pulled up the digital files for Willowbrook Estates on my office computer. What I found was interesting. The original development permit required the HOA to maintain certain standards for water conservation, including restrictions on lawn irrigation, limits on decorative fountains, and mandatory low-flow fixtures in all homes. In exchange, they received a reduced rate on their bulk water supply contract. I started cross-referencing their permit requirements with the satellite imagery of the neighborhood. It didn't take long to spot the problems. Karen's house at 1247 Willowbrook Circle had a massive decorative fountain in the front yard, elaborate water features throughout the landscaping, and what appeared to be an irrigation system that was clearly exceeding permitted usage levels. The satellite images showed her lawn was green as a golf course, even during the recent drought restrictions. But wait, there's more. I pulled up the water usage reports for the past 6 months. Karen's household was consuming nearly 3 times the permitted amount for a residence of that size. According to our records, she was using enough water for a small apartment complex. That's when I noticed something else in the HOA files. Karen hadn't just been harassing us about the fence line. She'd been filing complaints with the county about our ranch for months, trying to get us cited for everything from unsightly farm equipment to inappropriate agricultural odors. She'd been waging a campaign to force us out of the neighborhood. Drop your predictions in the comments. What do you think I did next? Thursday morning, I got a call from our ranch neighbor, Bill Henderson. Bill's been farming the adjacent property for 30 years, and he's got a front-row seat to all the Willowbrook Estates drama. "Jake, you need to hear this," Bill said. "I was at the feed store yesterday and overheard Karen Mitchell talking to some of her HOA buddies. She's planning to file a lawsuit against your family's ranch. Claims you're operating an illegal commercial livestock operation in a residential area." This was news to me. Our ranch has been operating under the same agricultural exemption for 40 years, long before Willowbrook Estates even existed. We're grandfather-claused under county regulations, and our property taxes reflect our agricultural status. "There's more," Bill continued. "She's been going around the neighborhood, collecting signatures for a petition to have your ranch declared a public nuisance. She's telling people that your cattle are contaminating the groundwater and lowering their property values." That's when I realized Karen's endgame. She wasn't just trying to grab our fence line, she was trying to force us off our land entirely. The woman who'd been violating water conservation laws for months was claiming we were the environmental problem. But here's what Karen didn't know: her petition campaign was about to backfire spectacularly. That afternoon, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I knocked on doors in Willowbrook Estates to introduce myself as their Regional Water Authority Director. Most of the residents had no idea who I was or what I did for a living. The conversations were eye-opening. At 1156 Willowbrook Circle, I met Janet and Tom Wilson, a retired couple who'd moved here from Dallas. "We've been getting notices from Karen about some ranch problem," Janet said, but honestly, we love having the open space next door. It's peaceful, and we enjoy watching your cattle. At 1203 Willowbrook Drive, I talked to Maria Santos, a young mother with 2 kids. Karen's been telling everyone that the ranch is dangerous for children, Maria said, but my kids love seeing the animals. It's educational for them. House after house, the story was the same. Most residents had no problem with our ranch. They'd moved to Willowbrook specifically because they wanted to live near open space and rural property. Karen's petition was based on complaints that didn't actually exist. But the most interesting conversation happened at 1298 Willowbrook Lane, where I met retired engineer Harold Chun. Harold had been doing his own research on the neighborhood's water usage. "I've been tracking our water bills," Harold told me, "and something's not adding up. The HOA keeps raising our rates, claiming increased supply costs, but I've been monitoring the actual water authority rates online. We should be paying about 30% less than what we're currently charged." That's when everything clicked into place. Back at my office, I pulled up the complete financial records for Willowbrook Estates' water supply contract. What I discovered was shocking. The HOA had been systematically overcharging residents for their water usage. They were buying water from the authority at the contracted bulk rate, then marking it up by 40% before billing individual homeowners. Over 5 years, this had generated nearly $200,000 in excess revenue. But here's the kicker: Karen Mitchell, as HOA president, was the sole signatory on the water billing account. The money was going into a separate account that she controlled, supposedly for community improvements. I cross-referenced the Community Improvement Fund with the actual improvements made to Willowbrook Estate. There was no record of $200,000 worth of improvements. The money had simply vanished. Karen wasn't just harassing us about the ranch. She was embezzling from her own neighbors. Wait until you hear what I found next. I decided to dig deeper into Karen's property records. Her $4 million estate at 1247 Willowbrook Circle had been purchased 3 years ago for $2.8 million. She'd financed the purchase with a massive mortgage and used the property as collateral for additional loans. According to public records, Karen was leveraged to the hilt. Her monthly payments on the mortgage, home equity loans, and credit lines totaled nearly $18,000 per month. For someone whose only listed income was part-time real estate sales, that math didn't add up. Unless, of course, she was supplementing her income with embezzled HOA funds. That's when I made the call that would end Karen's reign of terror. Friday morning, I contacted Detective Sarah Rodriguez with the County Financial Crimes Unit. Detective Rodriguez specializes in HOA fraud cases, and she was very interested in what I'd discovered. "Mr. Morrison, what you're describing fits a pattern we've seen in several upscale communities," she said. "HOA board members with access to community funds and personal financial pressures. We'll need to conduct a full audit of their accounts." I provided Detective Rodriguez with all the water usage data, billing records, and financial discrepancies I'd documented. Within 2 hours, she had a warrant to freeze the HOA's accounts and seize their financial record. But the best part was still coming. Detective Rodriguez also requested a comprehensive water usage audit for all Willowbrook Estates properties. As Regional Water Authority Director, I was required to conduct an immediate compliance inspection for any property suspected of exceeding permitted usage levels. That meant I had the authority to shut off water service to any property found in violation of conservation regulations. Guess whose house was at the top of the violation list? Saturday morning, I received an urgent call from Officer Martinez. "Jake, you need to get down to Willowbrook Estates. Karen Mitchell is having some kind of breakdown, and she's demanding to speak with you." When I arrived, I found Karen standing in her front yard, screaming at a group of her neighbors who had gathered around her fountain. Detective Rodriguez was there with the Financial Crimes Unit, and they were in the process of serving Karen with a warrant for the HOA financial record. "This is all his fault," Karen was shouting, pointing at me as I walked up. He's trying to destroy our community because he can't handle living next to successful people. Mrs. Wilson, the retired lady I'd met earlier, stepped forward. Karen, we know about the water billing fraud. Detective Rodriguez showed us the record. You've been stealing from all of us. Karen's face went white. That's not. I mean, those funds were for community improvements. What improvements? Demanded Harold Chen, the retired engineer. We've been tracking every penny spent on this neighborhood. There's $200,000 missing from our accounts. That's when I decided it was time to deliver the final blow. I walked over to the concrete pad near our fence line and opened the main supply valve cover. Inside was the master control for Willowbrook Estates water supply, a digital system that could be controlled remotely through my Water Authority tablet. Karen, I said loudly enough for all her neighbors to hear, as Regional Director of the Guadalupe Valley Water Authority, I'm hereby notifying you that your property at 1247 Willowbrook Circle is in violation of permitted water usage limits. I held up my tablet, showing the water usage data for her address. Over the past 6 months, you've exceeded your permitted consumption by 340%. Your decorative fountains, irrigation systems, and overall usage violate the conservation standards required for reduced-rate service. The neighbors were gathering closer, listening to every word. Additionally, I continued, the financial investigation has revealed that the HOA's water billing practices constitute fraud. Until this matter is resolved and proper conservation measures are implemented, water service to your property will be suspended. I tapped the screen on my tablet. The digital display showed, service suspended 1247 Willowbrook Circle. Karen's massive fountain sputtered and went silent. Her irrigation system shut down. Her kitchen faucets went dry. The woman who'd tried to destroy our family ranch was now standing in front of her $4 million estate with no water service. You can't do this. Karen screamed. I'll sue you. I'll sue the Water Authority. I'll sue the county. Detective Rodriguez stepped forward. Ma'am, you're currently under investigation for embezzlement and fraud. I'd suggest you focus on getting an attorney rather than making more threats. Karen turned to her neighbors, expecting support, but found only angry faces staring back at her. These people had trusted her with their community funds, and she'd betrayed them. This is all a misunderstanding, she pleaded. I was protecting our property values. That ranch was bringing down the neighborhood. Harold Chen shook his head. Karen, you've been stealing from us for years. The ranch has nothing to do with this. Maria Santos, the young mother, spoke up. My kids love the ranch. You're the one who's been causing problems in this neighborhood. That's when Karen completely lost it. She started screaming about property rights, about how she'd worked too hard to let some cowboy ruin her life, about how none of this was fair. But here's the thing about consequences, they don't care about your feelings. The County Financial Crimes Unit worked fast. Within a week, they'd traced the missing $200,000 from the HOA account. Karen had been using the money to make payments on her over-leveraged mortgage and to fund her extravagant lifestyle. The water usage audit revealed that Karen's property wasn't the only one in violation. Her cronies on the HOA board, the same people who'd been supporting her harassment campaign against our ranch, were also exceeding permitted consumption levels. But the most damaging evidence came from Karen's own files. Detective Rodriguez found emails where Karen had explicitly discussed her plan to force our ranch out of the area to improve property values and increase assessment potential. She'd been planning to seize our land through legal harassment, then sell it to developers for a massive profit. The fence line dispute wasn't about boundaries, it was about a land grab worth millions of dollars. Comment your worst HOA experience below, but wait until you hear how this ends. 3 weeks later, Karen Mitchell was arrested on charges of embezzlement, fraud, and filing false police report. The district attorney's office was taking the case seriously because it involved a public official, HOA president, misusing community funds. Karen's $4 million estate went into foreclosure. With her income from the embezzled funds cut off, she couldn't make her mortgage payments. The bank seized the property, and Karen was forced to move out of Willowbrook Estates in disgrace. The HOA board was dissolved and replaced with new leadership. Harold Chen, the retired engineer who'd been tracking the financial irregularities, was elected as the new president. His first act was to apologize publicly to our ranch and to invite us to participate in future community planning discussions. The water service to Karen's former address was restored once the new homeowners proved they would comply with conservation regulations. The decorative fountains were removed, and the irrigation system was redesigned to meet permitted usage standards. But the most satisfying part was still to come. 6 months later, the new HOA board approached us with a proposition. They wanted to create a community partnership between Willowbrook Estates and our ranch. The idea was to preserve the rural character that had attracted residents to the area in the first place. They offered to purchase a conservation easement on our property, which would prevent future development while providing us with a significant financial benefit. The easement would ensure that our ranch would remain agricultural land in perpetuity, protecting both our family's legacy and the neighborhood's rural atmosphere. The partnership also included educational opportunities. We started offering ranch tours for the neighborhood kids, teaching them about agriculture, animal care, and land stewardship. Maria Santos' children became regular visitors, and they loved helping with the cattle feeding. Janet and Tom Wilson, the retired couple, became close friends. Tom started helping with fence repairs, and Janet brought us fresh baked goods every week. They said living next to our ranch was the best part of their retirement. Even better, the new HOA leadership invited us to join their community advisory board. They wanted our input on development decisions and land use planning. We went from being harassed neighbors to being valued community partners. But here's the most ironic part of this whole story. Karen's campaign to force us out and increase property values had exactly the opposite effect. The conservation easement partnership with the HOA actually increased property values in Willowbrook Estates by 15%. Real estate agents started marketing homes in the neighborhood as adjacent to protected ranch land and guaranteed rural views. The very thing Karen had tried to destroy became the neighborhood's biggest selling point. Karen, meanwhile, was serving 18 months in county jail for embezzlement. Her real estate license was revoked, and she was ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA. The judge noted that her position of trust as HOA president made her crimes particularly serious. The woman who'd tried to steal our land ended up losing everything she'd worked for. The woman who'd called the police on me for digging a fence post hole ended up in jail herself. And the ranch that she'd tried to destroy became the most valuable asset in the entire community. Sometimes I still think about that Tuesday morning when Karen came marching across the yard in her white pantsuit, so confident that she could intimidate us into giving up our land. She saw a simple ranch hand with a shovel and thought she could push us around. What she didn't realize was that knowledge is power, and authority comes from competence, not from bullying. She underestimated not just who I was professionally, but what our family had built over 4 decades of honest work. The truth is, we never wanted a fight with the HOA or with Karen personally. We just wanted to work our land in peace and raise our cattle without harassment. But when someone threatens your family's livelihood and legacy, you have to stand up and fight back. Karen made the classic bully's mistake. She picked on someone she thought was powerless, without bothering to learn who she was really dealing with. She assumed that expensive lawyers and HOA politics would be enough to steamroll a simple ranching family. But here's what every Karen needs to understand. Respect isn't about money or position or fancy neighborhoods. It's about how you treat people, especially people you think can't fight back. And sometimes, the person you're trying to push around has the power to push back in ways you never imagined. The ranch is still here. The cattle are still grazing. The fence posts are still standing exactly where they're supposed to be. and every time I drive past Karen's old house, now owned by a lovely young family who actually appreciates living next to our ranch, I'm reminded that justice, like water, always finds its way to where it belongs. What would you have done in this situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you want to hear more stories about HOA karma coming back to bite the bullies. If you enjoyed this story of epic HOA revenge, make sure to subscribe to Yes Stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss when we drop another satisfying tale of justice served. We post new revenge stories every single day, and trust me, they just keep getting better. And here's the thing, this wasn't the only time someone tried to mess with the wrong neighbor. I've got dozens more stories about entitled people who learn the hard way that you never know who you're dealing with. Hit that like button if you want to see more HOA Karens getting exactly what they deserve. Share this video with anyone who's ever dealt with a power-hungry HOA president or neighborhood bully. They'll thank you for it. And if you've got your own HOA revenge story, drop it in the comments. The best ones might just become our next video. Don't forget to check out our playlist of HOA horror stories if you're in the mood for a marathon session of entitled people facing consequences. And remember, here at Yes Stories, we believe that karma always comes around, it just sometimes needs a little help from people who know how to fight back. See you in the next story, and remember, never mess with someone until you know exactly who they are. You might just be picking a fight with the person who controls your water supply.